Hello everyone, welcome back. Tonight's stream's a little bit different. So tonight's stream will be brought to you by GitKraken, specifically the GitKraken CLI. Now, anybody who's watched my stream for any length of time knows that I really love the GitKraken GUI client, and I've used it quite a bit. Really love it. It is an awesome tool. If you haven't checked it out, go do so. But tonight we're going to look at a new tool from GitKraken, their CLI application. Now this is really targeted at users who like their terminal. They like using Git on the command line. GitKraken client has a built-in terminal, but it's not really the same as somebody who really likes to live inside of their command line interface or their terminal. It feels a little awkward to have to open up a GUI application just to use a terminal. Why do that? So let's take a look at what this actually is. So here I'm actually playing inside of a virtual machine that I spun up. This is a fairly bare bones machine. I haven't hardly installed anything on it. Brand new Windows, got the updates, logged into my account, did spend a minute and install the latest PowerShell because I needed a reasonable terminal. We're off to the races, right? Okay, GitKraken CLI. There's going to be links for all of this stuff down in the description. So if you need any of it, it'll be there. But this thing here is really designed to augment people who want to work in that terminal. People who are used to using the Git on the command line and really want to have something to give them a little bit more power, something to manage the repos at a little bit higher level. The Git command line tool is great for interacting with a single repo. We all know how to commit, push, pull, the usual, right? That makes sense. This is something on top of that, not necessarily to replace it. So let's go ahead and get it installed. So first of all, on Windows, it's real simple. If you've already got WinGit, we're just gonna grab this guy and go whoop, boom, and we're off and running and downloading, doing the needful. It's going to extract, it's going to take off, poof. Path environment variable modified, restart your shell. Sure, great, fine, we'll restart my shell. And of course it resets my zoom and all the wonderful stuff, but you can see new PowerShell. Okay, so let's take a look at this thing. So we now have the new command GK. Right, this doesn't replace Git, and in fact, if we look, I don't even have Git installed. So let's actually fix that real quick because let's see, wingit search Git, because we're probably going to need Git if we want to do anything of significance here. Let's see, where is Git? Yeah, that thing. Wingit install, paste, enter. So we will actually install Git as well because this tool actually leverages Git for a lot of what it does. And then we'll go back and take a look at the help output. Okay, and we're back. Git finally installed, usual install process, nothing fancy. Let's take a look at the GitKraken CLI again. So if I just type in GK, I can see that there is a bunch of commands that are in here. Now you'll note there is this login command, and I'm going to intentionally come back to that in a minute because I kind of want to show off everything that's here first. A lot of these features are going to require you to either sign up for an account, log in, or do something else. So specifically the graph function, you'll note it says open a visual commit graph in the GitKraken client or GitLens VS Code type situation. So obviously to use that command, you're going to need to have those other tools available to you to be able to use them. Not a big deal. If you're inside of a terminal, I'm guessing you probably don't care too much about the graph because you like your terminal interface and are happy there. Things like some of these issue patch PRs, those ones are also going to require you to be able to have some cloud-based interactions, also going to require to log in. There is this cool little reactivate your trial license if you need to. And then there's this workspace one. This is the one that's the most interesting here. So let's take a look at that. So it has an abbreviation WS for workspace, or if you really like typing a lot, you can type out the whole word. But in here, we see that there's a bunch of commands. So within the GitKraken tooling, a workspace is a collection of repositories and projects that you can work with. And specifically, when you are building out anything of scale, unless you're doing a single mono repo, you probably have several repositories of things that go together. Even for me doing open source work, even if the repositories aren't really tightly coupled together, there's oftentimes several repositories that I like to work with. For example, the material design library that I often do my streams on, I've got an examples repository that goes along with it. I've got my XAML test library. That is the UI testing library that I built specifically for material design in XAML. So typically, if I'm going to start working on the project, I have all of these other repos that I probably want to bring along for the ride. So a workspace can be a logical collection of those types of repositories that maybe you want to work with all at once. So let's go through and take a look at this. So if we do GKWS create, and again, I am not logged in, so obviously cloud is not going to work, but we can do a local workspace. And we will call this local, how about MDIX for material design and XAML, my material design repos. Can't type, that's fine. Do you want to add your first repository? Not yet. So with and I'm going to just clear the screen. There's some issues with some of the rendering and the way that it does its menu, at least on latest PowerShell with Windows Terminal. Your mileage may vary on different terminals. So if we do, let's see, GK workspace list, we should be able to see I've now got a local workspace. There's no repos in it. If I do a GK workspace switch, you can see that my default workspace is now local MDIX. If you have multiple workspaces, you'll end up getting a menu that lets you pick between them. There is also a lovely little switch in here that you can go through and do and automatically select a workspace. Now this is incredibly powerful, and it's important to note that this is a global flag that they have here. So for so many of these commands, you're often going to want to say, hey, this is the workspace I want to work with. Now it'll fall back to your default, I think in every case that I've played with, at least so far. But if there's a specific workspace that you automatically want to switch to, for example, if we want to do GK workspace switch, local MDIX, right? If you were doing a little bit of scripting or similar and you wanted to play with this, that kind of thing works as well. Now, some of this stuff doesn't always lend itself well to scripting because it does have, I don't want to say a command line GUI, but it's kind of a command line GUI. It likes to render and draw pretty pictures, use ASCII codes and that kind of thing. So it works pretty well. Okay, let's take a look in here. So we would like to go through and add a repository. So if we look at GK workspace, and let's just do -- help real quick to go ahead and look at it. It's the add repo command that we're looking for. So let's go ahead and do GK workspace add repo. Boom, boom, boom. And it's going to say using resource, and then because this is a local workspace, we have to give it a local repository path. Now, if you're doing a cloud workspace, you can just feed this the URL for like your GitHub repo, and it's perfectly happy to go and leverage that. We'll show that in a little bit. But for now, this is wanting a local repository path. We don't actually have one, so let's go mkdir, let's do local, and then let's just actually get some stuff in here. So git clone, and then I think I've got my material design repo open here. Again, links in the description if you want it. I'm just going to copy this guy down here, and we're just going to clone it. Did we not install Git? Restart my terminal. Apparently, I may not have installed Git previously, so let's try this again. Git. There we go. Okay. Okay, so where are we? cd c:\dev. Right? Oh no, we just did cd local. Can't type today. That's okay. That's okay. We are going to get through this. Okay, git clone. Hey, thank you. Boom. Auto coding for the win. And we're just going to clone the repository, just so that we can show doing some of this stuff. Okay, so we've got a repository here. We're off to the races. Now let's go ahead and do the, let's see, GK workspace add repo. And then this guy here wants to know the path. So here what we can just do is, I think we can just, can we auto code this guy? I think I can just do material design in XAML toolkit. Let's do that. Boom. Do you want to add another repository? No, thank you. Okay, clear that. GK workspace. Got to spell it correctly. Info, I believe. Cool. So it did pick it up properly. we now have our workspace. It has a repository in here. Awesome. Now, what this gets you, and again, I haven't signed in. I haven't made an account. Right? This is totally free. Haven't done anything. You can go and play with this today and do all the same stuff. Okay, let's do GK workspace help. So the key thing in here that you end up with that I think is totally awesome is you get these batch level commands once you have a workspace set up. So I only have a single repository right now, but we can do something like GK workspace pull, right? And then it'll go through and say, okay, which repos do you want? You can use the arrow keys to select. My big head is in the way, but it says right arrow to select all, left arrow for none, or you can type to start filtering. So you do kind of get that that interface, and then it just works, right? And it goes through and pulls. So if you have a bunch of repositories, and for example, you come in the middle in the morning to start working, it's like, okay, I just update all the stuff, right? Or maybe you're switching between multiple kind of logical projects, i.e. workspaces. And each time you switch back, you're like, hey, before I start working, just update all the stuff, right? I've got a big team. They're doing lots of great work, but you know, I'm gone for a couple days. Heaven forbid somebody works on the weekend or the holidays. Don't do that. But you come back, you're like, just keep me up to date. GK workspace pull, and you're done, right? It goes through and executes all of those batch level commands, which in my opinion is just awesome. There's a couple things I want to highlight with these though. So for example, obviously there's going to be the question, well, hang on, what if I need to start like passing extra switches to Git, because maybe, you know, just a blind pull isn't what I want, right? So let's do this. We'll look at the help. When in doubt, -- help on the end of any of these commands will get you to the help output for it. There is kind of a bug with the root level GK. You'll note I'm not doing GK -- help. That's currently showing an error. Just type GK and you'll get yourself there. So it's still kind of being worked out. There's some bugs. This is new. It's awesome though. Still pretty slick. So the one thing that I really want to highlight here is this little bit right here, passing flags to the Git command by providing this double hyphen. Now, for those of you in the .NET space, this is probably going to feel a little bit familiar to you, similar to when you do like a .NET run, and you need to separate the CLI tokens that you want to feed to .NET run versus the CLI tokens that you want to feed to your app that .NET run is going to invoke. Same kind of thing here, is we need to separate the CLI tokens that we want to feed to GK versus the CLI tokens that we want to feed to Git. And so the idea here is, like in the examples, this little hyphen comes in, and then everything on the command line after it, this is what's going to get fed to Git. Right? So if you want to go through and do a pull, this much gets fed into GK. GK is going to do some stuff. It's going to invoke Git, and then this is going to get tacked on to that Git CLI invocation that it's going to end up doing for you. Great, perfect. And all of the other batch commands have a similar thing here with this kind of escape sequence. So if you need to do something fancy, now obviously you could run yourself into a little bit of trouble if, for example, you have all of these repositories, but maybe you don't name your remotes all the same or similar, and it makes kind of this batch processing difficult. Don't do that. Knock it off, right? You can name your remotes whatever you want. Do yourself a favor, name them in a logical manner. Okay, so now let's start in on some of the more interesting stuff, right? Because there is more in here, and it might be fun to kind of show some of that off. So for example, GK user info, right? Can't use it. There is no user. So we're going to log in. So we fire this up, GK login, and we are going to sign in. So we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, and we're back. Once you get yourself logged in, you are going to be greeted with a screen that looks something like this. And the important thing is this token down here. You want to click the little button to go ahead and copy that. And if we go back to our terminal, we're going to just paste that in, enter, And you will note that it says, welcome to GitKraken CLI, KDemo, which is what I have set up for this. Do you want to select to default workspace? I'm going to say no for now. And then we're going to just go GK workspace list as it suggests. And we'll note here that it is showing that I now have two workspaces, the local one that we created earlier, as well as this cloud workspace down here that already has a number of repos in it. Now, I want you to imagine that you have a team, you're bringing a new team member on, there's a bunch of repos that they might need to go ahead, get cloned and pulled down. This is an awesome way to have this set up so that those new team members coming on, or maybe just future Kevin with a new computer, wants to be able to pull down all of those repositories. I now have one easy way to go through and do that. So let's demonstrate that. So we're going to go ahead and back up, and we are going to, let's see, make a new directory. Call it cloud. Great. CD cloud. Boom. Okay. And then we are going to go GK workspace clone. And then we will go ahead and pick our workspace. And then it will ask us to go through and pick which repositories we want. Just like before, right selects all, left clears all, space picks individual ones. You can go ahead and type if you want to start filtering down. Let's see. So if I just start typing in example, I can go ahead and get just down to that. But for here, we're just going to pick them all, hit enter. Destination directory is inside my cloud directory. Perfect. Let's go ahead and launch it. Do we want to create it? Yeah, that sounds great. And you'll note here we run into an error. Now, your mileage may vary on this. In my case, it is failing, but in a lot of your cases, it may work. Now, unfortunately, again, things to be worked out. The error isn't really clear as to what is going on. But in my case, it comes down to SSH keys and the way my GitHub account is set up to be able to access it. So GitHub is unfortunately doing the appropriate thing and blocking access. Thank you. But it does mean, because this is a new machine, I need to actually go through and get that set up. So if you would like to watch that video, for a link in the description. Otherwise, we're going to fix that and come back in just a second. Okay. Now that we've got our cloud workspace loaded up, which we can see here, we've got two repositories in it. Let's actually clone it and pull it down. So we will go ahead and run a, let's see, a GK workspace clone. It'll ask us to pick our workspace. Great. We'll go ahead and do that. We will pick our repositories. Again, you can filter, individually select with the arrow keys, left, right for all, none, or in space for individuals, or you can filter. So if you've got really big workspaces and you only want to grab a handful of things, great. In this case, we're going to grab everything. Destination directory, sure, sounds good. And then go ahead and create the directory. Yeah, sounds great. And we are off to the races and cloning. And in just a moment, when I am no longer stalling for time, we will see that both of our repositories have successfully been cloned down. Huzzah. All right, so we can go ahead and CD into here. We can take a look at it. And we'll just jump into one of these and do something like a git status to take a look. And we can see, yes, we are in fact inside of a Git repository. We're on the master branch. We are synced up with origin master. Huzzah. So, one, that's pretty cool from a simple standpoint of we can bring down an entire workspace, get all of the repositories local without hardly any work. But that's only the beginning of where things start. So at the beginning, we had talked about some of the additional commands that we get access to once we start using cloud-based workspaces. So for example, if I do GK issue list. So now remember, this is a little different than some of the other commands that you may use that only target a single repository. This is actually targeting everything that's inside of the workspace. So you can see here, I'm pulling back several issues from the example repository, displaying up to 30. I've got links I can just click on to dive straight out to them if I want to jump to GitHub and take a look. You can see I'm also getting issues from the main material design repository, which is great. You'll note the issue list does have quite a bit of filtering available to you. So if you want to be able to say, okay, I want to grab particular ones that were assigned to, created before, after, that kind of thing mentioned. I will point out, if you do any of the date related stuff, do pay attention to the appropriate formatting of the dates. Specifically, those people in the United States, this appears backwards to us. Okay, just for reference. The rest of the world tends to do it this way. Americans, we do it differently, just like we use the imperial system rather than metric. We're weird. But if you are going to play around with date stuff, do note the appropriate date patterns that you are allowed to use. The other one, and this is there's a subtle difference here. If we do GK issue view, this one's slightly different than just issue list, because issue list is, hey, dump me out a list of what's out there. Now this one gets a little weird because it looks like it's showing me far less information, but I'm going to hold down my arrow key and you'll note I can scroll. So this is secretly a scrollable view, which is kind of cool. Now, admittedly, at a certain point, scrolling through a list like this is not efficient. You should use the filters. Like, you can start typing to be able to find stuff. So, for example, I see something in there about flow document, and so I start typing in flow, and poof, now I can go through and find the exact issue that I want. This is awesome, right? Inline filtering, straight up. Because if you watch right here, right, I type in flow from right here, and now I've pulled down everything. I've got something about flow document, overflow, error message is overflowing. For my big head's in the way. So at least being able to do this and query issues is amazing. Once you find the one that you're interested in, for example, this one, you can dive into it to be able to get more information. As always, you can click on the link if you just want to jump out. There's a very similar command for PRs. So PR list. And we can see there's the same type of thing. We've got list command with similar options as to what we saw on issue. We can do GKPR view and do something very similar as well, where we'll once again get that nice scrollable list. In this case, there's not a lot of PRs open between those two repos, so I only have 3 to play with. So less exciting to show this off because I don't have a lot of data in those two. You should pick on one with more. That's why I did the issue list. There was a lot more data to play with. But once again, we can say, oh, okay, let's dive in and take a look at this PR. You can see that there are 12 more comments that got omitted, but at least we can start to take a look at everything that's here. You get some nice feedback. One thing I failed to mention before, and you kind of get it for free depending on your environment, but the GK tool does leverage nerd fonts to be able to render a lot of these icons. So depending on your environment of choice, maybe you already have those installed. If not, there's some easy links in their docs to be able to go through and pull those in. Makes everything look a little pretty. You get the nice fancy icons and that sort of thing. Okay, let's get on to something even cooler than that, because those are great, those are fine, whatever. But here's one of the coolest ones, GK Focus. Okay, and this is going to do something very different. You'll note it just wiped the screen, goes back and forth. So terminals can kind of have GUIs a little bit. And for people who have played around with Focus View in the GitKraken client, this will feel very familiar, like you've seen something like this before. There's a reason. Right, so you'll note I've got my all section. I can dial across to my PR section. I've got my issues section. There's some kind of weird rendering things happening along the top. I'm gonna pretend like I don't notice them because but you'll note I can go through, I can scroll through various issues. I can press enter to jump over to this side. I can press tab and you'll see the purple border around the outside here move my focus, and then I can scroll up and down if I want to go through and look at this. Tab back, go back over to PRs, open, close, and once again, you can kind of go through and see the data being displayed here. This is awesome, in my opinion. This is amazing. So if you are a command line user, this makes managing all of your stuff in one place. You no longer have to jump out of your terminal and go to a browser, because quite often, especially for people who are doing this, you don't have these kind of management collaboration tools in the command line. They're usually in other applications. This now brings a lot of that functionality into here with an immense amount of power. And then the other thing is you can always jump out to these things using the O to, if you say, you know what, I can't see what I need to do here. I want to do some like reassignments or move these issues to somebody else. Great. Go ahead, hit the open thing, jump into your browser, tweak what you need to. You're off to the races. The other big thing to show off in here, like for example, you can see I've got some 2-year-old issues in here. They're all very similar. It's creating READMEs for a lot of the example apps that are out there. And these are largely tagged for Hacktoberfest because I like to give people some easy access at times. And I secretly created all of these. Oops, double clicked and it opened for me. I had secretly created all these with the GitHub CLI just to rip through them all. But you can actually use the S to snooze these items and move it over into your snoozed area instead. That way you can keep the issues in the PR sections focused on what's actually important to you and what you want to actually look at. So we're gonna quit out of here. And there is a weird issue that I've noted before, where when you either open the path URL or similar, you can kind of see the ASCII codes dropping out here. Something goes weird when this thing pops the browser. Don't fully understand it, but that is an issue that has been reported. So we're gonna get out of there, clear. There we go. Okay, so back to where we were going. I just want to call out too, there are a few minor settings in here as far as like listing organizations for people who might have multiple orgs that their GitKraken account is in. Managing a handful of settings. There's not a lot in here yet. This thing is still wanting to do ASCII code, so I'm just going to kill that terminal real quick and burn that down. Okay. GK, there we are. So GK settings. All right, so we can see there's a few minor things in here about like managing concurrency, default app for opening graph, little things. Not a lot in here currently, at least. And then some minor information on like user profile information or similar. And then obviously log in, log out. So those are kind of the big areas of the GitKraken CLI. My opinion is this is an awesome tool to start giving you that power to sort of manage the collaboration and workflow, specifically around PRs, issues, and managing your team's work without needing to leave. So if you are a terminal-based user, this is a tool I would highly recommend you check out. Again, it is completely free to jump in and play with. There are a handful of things like the focus view and the cloud workspaces, arguably the coolest features, that do require actually having an account. But if all you're looking for is something to help manage like batch commands of your repositories, you can use it to make a local workspace and still get at least that much of the functionality out of it without even needing to sign up for an account. If you do like to sign up for an account, my GitKraken link is floating past in the description. Always appreciate the referrals. And as always, I'll see everyone next time. Happy coding.